Joining us from her office at the Brain Performance Center in Dallas, which she started, Leigh Richardson, PhD. Leigh, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Okay, so first off, how'd you end up starting the Brain Performance Center?
Well, I used to be in human performance, resources, and I have two boys, and one got hit by a car, and we started experiencing some difficulties. So I switched to the brain performance world, worked for a neurologist for a few years as a board certified neurotherapist. And then in 2009, I started the Brain Performance Center. And in 2022, from that emerged the Brain Performance Institute.
And what are the differences?
Well, at the Brain Performance Center, we work with individuals, ADHD, autism, depression, anxiety. And at the Brain Performance Institute, we work collectively. We work with organizations to create psychological safety, create more of a neurodivergent strategy within the organizations.
Okay, so, all right, what exactly is neurotherapy? Could you explain that?
And neurotherapy it includes several, well, technology today, it includes several different things, but it's a way to train the brain to get into a regulated state. And another term for neurotherapy is neurofeedback. And now we've got neuromodulation and neurostimulation, but it's all of that. And then we use coaching and counseling too. So you come at it from both a technical and a human standpoint to create the change, the behavioral changes in the brain and in the person's actions.
Okay, so I have a question here. Now, you said in your biography that you ended up in the emergency room a couple times for brain-related injuries, correct?
And I have. I've been in ICU twice.
Yeah. All right. So here's my question. I know that there's people who have been in accidents where the vast majority of their brain is basically like gone, and yet they still function, right? They still seem to be okay. Can people train themselves to bypass parts of the brain? Can you do that with neurotherapy?
Well, people can create neuroplasticity in the brain, and neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change.
Uh-huh.
And we can all do that. If you like the last year, the last couple of months I was doing my PhD, I decided I'm not going to use my right hand for my mouse anymore. I'm going to use my left hand. And that was a lot harder than I thought it would be. But that changed the way the brain, that the hand-eye coordination, the brain had to learn how to do new things. And that's how you create neuroplasticity.
Do you mind if
For
I ask how long did that take you to learn that?
well, I did it for a couple of months, but
Uh-huh.
you create neuroplasticity if you love to cook. Is there a cuisine that you've never cooked? I love Thai food. I've never cooked Thai food. Cook some Thai food, you know? For
Yeah.
instead of brushing your teeth with your right hand, brush your teeth with your left hand.
Well, that's interesting. All right. Okay, so all right, before we get into the thing about the food thing, which really, I mean, that's the primary reason I wanted to have you on here, and also because I have been going on, and this is entirely anecdotal. I do not pretend to be an expert like you. I've been going on for quite a while about the fact that there's essentially, from what I can notice, there's an epidemic of loneliness in America. There's way, way too many people who are lonely, and I think it has an effect on just a whole bunch of stuff. So, first of all, am I right about that?
You are absolutely correct. In May 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General declared loneliness a state of urgency. And I believe the figure was 1 out of 2 people are lonely. And when we're lonely, we disconnect, we disassociate, we shut down. It's not good for the brain, it's not good for the body, it's not good for anything.
Okay, but is it a chicken and the egg thing in the sense that are we lonely because we've disconnected, or do we disconnect because we're lonely?
Well, the chicken and the egg, that comes into play with a lot of things. And I think that what I read the Surgeon General's report, and I think that what it was more focused on was as a result of being in isolation. And that isolation, there was a cause for that. The COVID was the cause. And we were put into isolation. And for honestly, I had a lot of clients that they were so happy that they didn't have to go into work. that they could work from home. And for some people, that really gave them a sense of comfort. But then, I mean, during that time, I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't go to church. I couldn't go to the Starbucks and sit down and have a cup of coffee. And that creates a feeling of being disconnected. You know, I can't tell you how many clients I haven't said, are you, you're still grieving for before. And they're like, yeah, I want my normal back. And normal's gone. We've all got to create a new normal.
So it affected people two completely different ways, correct?
It did. I think for some of us, it was it was comforting, it was reassuring, but it kept us within the world that we wanted to stay. And at some point, you realize that, I am lonely. I saw a statistic that said there are people that haven't talked to a human being for three, it was more than a few days.
Yeah,
And
I've
I
seen
thought,
that too.
and how can you not talk to a human being? We don't have to. I mean, anytime I get in the car and I'm going to figure out where I go, what do? I pick up my phone and I put that address in. And it's so easy to exist within ourselves and to become so insular. And I think it is easy. And we all like to take the easy.
Well, the thing about being lonely is that, I mean, there's an old sketch from Saturday Night Live, where they did an app, and the idea is like app's called Go Outside, and the idea is you want to meet people, go outside. So, but the thing is, it's for a lot of people, it's not that easy. I mean, if you're lonely, if you haven't talked to somebody for 5 days, there's a good possibility because you have nobody to talk to. So how do you like? I mean, in some ways, it's a really simple problem and solution, and in other ways, for other people, it's unbelievably hard. What do you do? I
It
mean,
is unbelievably hard. And I saw a statistic for the Gen Zs that their lack of friendship. And it is, and I found the older we get, the harder it is to make new friends. And you've got to get involved. You've got to find something that you believe in. Or for me, the animals, that always works. And you've got to have a sense of community. And even if you don't have to be the loudest speaking person in that community, you can sit on the sidelines. You can hang back a little bit, but you can participate. And as a result of participation, you can feel included and you can feel that you have a community to belong to. And without a sense of community, you do feel lonely. I mean, and it comes down to a sense of purpose. We all have to have a reason to get up every day.
yeah, but you just touched on this, and that is about young people and Gen Z and their goddamn phones. And of course, I'm an old guy now, and I'm going off of the people that getting on my lawn. But I do have to tell you, without going into too much detail, I was one of the developers of social media, and I have to admit, I regret my involvement. I think it's done way more harm than good. I really do. And what's your take on that? I mean, we have a whole generation of, well, I'll call them kids now, who basically are like completely glued to their phones and they don't actually talk to real people. And I think it's disgusting.
Well, I think social media has it's created a comparative society. And when you compare, you got a winner and a loser. And I don't like that.
Yeah, it's very true. And that's you put that very succinctly too. I never thought of it in that way, but you're right. Everyone gets online and they're comparing their lives to everybody else's lives. And, and like most people are just gussing it up. I don't know. This is a part where I bitch. Yeah, but I think these kids need to get out. That's what I think. I don't know. It's like, whatever. Okay, enough about me. All right. So the reason I wanted you on here is because about the fact, so now your premise, and I don't totally buy this. Now I have to tell you something too, Leigh. Like, I've done 108 shows here. My wife's never watched any of them. But when I told her you were coming on, she said she might watch this one because she feels really strong. She's really into diet, and she totally agrees with your premise about the fact that a lot of people are having emotional and mental issues because their diet's so bad. Now, first of all, nobody cooks. That seems to be a thing. How did we lose that? Where
We live in a world that's so fast and so furious, and we want instant gratification, and we can get it. I mean, I saw on a news clip now that, there's so many services where you can have organically homemade meals delivered to your home. And if you sign up on a subscription basis, it's really not outrageously expensive for those that only cook 2 or 3 times a week, where you'll buy all this stuff and you end up, you don't use it. And so, it has a lot of different views, but I think that we all are stretching ourselves too thin. We work, the motto for the last couple of years has been, well, work hard, play hard. Well, what about some me time? What about some calm time? And I think that we push ourselves so hard that by the time we do have me time and calm time, we just want things easy. And, it's easy to get DoorDash. You don't even have to plan ahead. And Uber Eats, and not that one is any better than the other. I don't use either of them,
yeah.
but it is so easy. You don't have to cook.
Well, so what do you know, or have you folks isolated what it is in particular in fast food and processed food that's maybe screwing our brains up?
Well, I have a rule. If I can't pronounce what's on the back of the wrapper, I don't eat it.
Uh-huh.
And it's not real complex, but if you've ever looked at the back of a can or a wrapper, and I can't even say those words. It's synthetic chemicals, and those are not made to be digested. Your gut is your second brain. And if you're not taking care of your gut, then the body keeps score of everything that's going on in the brain. And that's a great book for our listeners.
Yeah.
And when the brain is out of whack, the body's out of whack, and vice versa. And nutrition and sleep, those are the two most fundamental things that you can do to take care of your brain.
So why aren't people getting enough sleep?
Lifestyle choices, going back to that good old social media. And, one of the first questions I'll ask a client is, where does your phone sleep? And if the answer is, well, I use it as an alarm, so it needs to be right next to my bed so that when I can hear that alarm, I can get up. Well, you can stick it in the room across the hall and turn the volume up and still hear it. And I think that we've gotten to where, when we all work from home and we had such flexibility in our schedule, that we got away from the number one remedy for insomnia is cognitive behavioral therapy. And all that is setting a sleep schedule. What's your routine before you go to sleep? How do you tell your brain, okay, it's time to wind down? And many people don't do that. Though there's blue light that comes out of a video or computer or phone screen, and that kind of jazzes the brain up. And I think the best thing that people can do for their sleep is, 2 hours before you plan on going to bed, go put your phone on the charger, give it a kiss goodnight, leave it alone, and start to wind the brain down.
I don't understand this, Lee. I'm a computer programmer, but I have no trouble ignoring my phone for like hours at a time. I mean, and it's because, like, partly what you're talking about, that we have so many distractions in our lives. I don't want to be distracted by this thing, And I don't know. My friends bitch about the fact they can't get a hold of me. I don't care. I don't. I like my quiet, but I'm talking about me again, and that we shouldn't be talking about me. I have to tell you though, and if you want, forgive me if you take offense to this. So, my wife has a lot of female friends, and they're all bitching about the fact they can't sleep, and then we want to go to lunch or brunch on Sunday at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm saying, have you ever actually tried it? Just try laying in bed and doing nothing. Have you ever tried it?
Well, try a little mindfulness when you're laying in bed, or a little gratitude. What are 3 things that I'm grateful for? Try to turn your instead of I can't sleep, I can't sleep, I'm wired up, I need to get up. I'm stop and try a little mindfulness. What are you grateful for? What brings you joy? I love visualization. Close your eyes. Go to your happy place.
All right. Have you figured out why some people are better at that than others?
Well, some people are better. Some people are, as someone just said, they don't want distractions. They want that focus. And I think that when you're self-aware and you recognize that adds value to you on some level, it's easier for you to do. And when that brain is constantly spinning and sped up, it's harder. That's just, and I've had many people say, that's just the way I roll. I roll at 110 miles an hour, and that's what makes me successful. And that they may think that, but research shows that the brain it's amazing to me when you calm the brain down, life gets so much better.
Yeah, so this is the thing also. Me bitching about those kids. All right, this is another problem I have. I have the feeling that because of these distractions of social media, we're actually getting less constructive thinking done as a society. I mean, if you look back, 70 years, the 1950s, you had a bunch of scientists or putting stuff together on quantum physics and all sorts of stuff, and there was a lot of stuff happening in the world. I'm starting to wonder if we have less, even though we have more people now, we have less of that type of thought because everyone's so goddamn distracted. Do you think there's something to that?
Well, research supports what you say. If you look at the 30-second commercial we used to practice the elevator speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's an 8-second speech now.
Uh-huh.
And research shows that we can't our focus time has cut down dramatically. And research attributes some of that to technology because we're training our brain. We can get an answer. I mean, I can remember having to go get an encyclopedia
Oh yeah.
and pick it up. Now, I mean, now I need a research study. I'll just pull up my phone and I can have it within 3 minutes. And we're retraining our brain that, well, that's all it takes. You
Oh,
don't,
Leah, I got to tell you the story. I had a 18-year-old programmer working for me years ago, and we went to lunch, and he says, "So let me get this straight. When you were in school, there was no internet. So and what did you do?" I said, "We went to the library." And he says, "But that's so lame." Yeah, right.
well, when it was the only choice you had, it was
That's
pretty
right.
sweet.
It was the only thing we had. That's absolutely correct. Okay, so the other thing I want to address here is okay. So our diets are affecting our mental state, but this is another obvious thing. They're also have you done any work on how obesity is affecting our mental state too? Is that like a cause and effect thing, or are they both interrelated, or how does that work?
Well, I'm going to kind of go back to something I said earlier. The body keeps score of everything that's going on in the brain. And when we keep our brain in a hyper aroused state, that keeps our body in a hyper aroused state. I saw a study that when people get lonely, they turn to food. Food is very comforting. And it was amazing what the study showed that certain parts of the brain would light up when they would see a picture of food, and the brain responded more to the sweets than it did to the savory, to the salty. And I'm sure other people's brain is different, but it is what we feel like we need, and it makes us feel good, and it makes us feel comfortable. And I think that they in the study it linked it to your BMI, your body mass index. And what's surprising to me when I first started doing this, and I don't want to date myself, but more people could tell me their BMI than they could tell me, well, that's great. That's great to know. How's your brain working? So
Oh,
different
yeah.
things are interesting to different people.
Um, I just thought of this. Is there any chance here that we're not getting enough sexual gratification? I mean, you're right. Food is a pleasure thing, and and obviously sex is a pleasure thing. And is that part of this problem too? Is that are we do you
Well, you
study?
think about it, when you think about it, sex takes energy. And if you're so tired and you're so fatigued, and because I've heard that in my practice, I just don't have the energy.
Uh-huh.
And when you don't have the energy, you lose the motivation and you lose the desire. So that's an interesting question.
I never thought about this though. It takes way less energy to eat than it does to screw. It does. It's eating
Yeah,
simple.
well, there's no denying that.
All right, you actually sent out a thing here. I read recently about the fact that the study that said that people, and this has been my anecdotal observation too, that people who are engaged in a religious activity seem to be way more mentally stable than people that aren't.
They are, and that has been proven study after study after study. And it's so interesting right now because people actually going to a church or a synagogue or a mosque, those numbers are declining. And but the research still supports those that do are happier. And I think I've thought about that. And I think those that actively are stay connected with a religion, whatever that religion is. And if you believe, you have faith. And I think there's a big difference between hope and faith. And I think those that are actively belonging and engaging have faith.
Well, the other thing is, and you're talking about loneliness, people who are involved in religious activities generally, well, and I don't mean a pun here, they congregate, they get together with each other, you know? Um, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. I'm 68 years old. This happens. Well, so okay. But yeah, I have often thought that in the United States, the the majority of people go to church not necessarily to worship, but to be around other like-minded people. I mean, is there any study that's actually talked about this, or do you
Oh,
know?
I'm absolutely sure there is because it's social connectivity.
Yeah,
And I've seen a study where they talked about when people pray with a community, it's much stronger than praying by yourself. And music, being part of singing in a church is more gratifying than singing by yourself in the
yeah,
bathtub.
yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the thing is, I am not particularly organized religion type person, but I have observed that all my friends who are seem to be more well adjusted than people that like me who are just basically nuts. I do, and here's another question I want to ask you too. In your studies, so now I do a lot of stuff on the show on paranormal stuff. Have you what do you think about the concept of the soul? Do you think that that's an actual like brain construct, or do you think it's something else, or doesn't exist, or what's your feelings on that? Or do you have any
I believe
have you done any research or
I haven't done any research, but I do believe in the soul. And during COVID, I decided I was going to paint. And I've never painted before in my life. And I painted my heart and my soul. And of course, it was very abstract, clear as a bell to me. I could see it.
is that one of your paintings behind you there?
No, no, I'm not quite that talented,
Okay,
but I
well,
do as you can see, I do like contemporary, but I
uh,
do believe in the soul, and I believe the soul is part of us that lives on, and I think we're nothing but energy, we're nothing but frequencies,
yeah.
and I think the soul, it has a certain I think that's that higher level frequency
Well,
that
I've
lives
had
on.
several people on the show who talk about near-death experiences, and I don't know, have you studied that? Have you studied those things?
Not in depth, no.
The amazing thing about it is that although people have a hard time putting in words what they experience, it appears all those experiences are generally the same. That's the thing about the thing that's really unusual about it. It's hard to believe that people are just making it up if because otherwise why would the stories match? I don't know. That's you know, I'm just talking now. That's what I do. I'm a talk show host.
Absolutely, and you do it really well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, you know your job too very well. I appreciate that too. All right. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is you said in some of your stuff I've read about training the brain on a excuse me on a conscious level. How, can you train your brain on a subconscious level, or
Well,
what's the ramifications of that?
so, and that's what we at the Brain Performance Center we do is we train the brain on a subconscious level by creating change how the brain's wiring and firing, getting that autonomic nervous system back in balance.
Uh-huh.
And when you get balance between the body and the brain and the intracellular communications, then the subconscious level can start to let go. Did you know, and this is a true fact, every minute your brain is capable of taking in something like 11 million bits of data. And research says that you can hold between 40 and 126 bits of data on the conscious level. And I believe it's 40, but it doesn't matter. We don't have to do the math. Where all the rest of it goes is to the subconscious. And that is where trauma lives. That's where disappointment lives. And the way that the brain processes information is it turns it into a story. It writes a story. Now here's the kicker. The brain doesn't have to have accurate information. Oh, I'm thinking through this. I've got to think through this. I've got to get this out of my head. And okay, well, what happened? Well, this happened. Did it really? That's a question. So, and a lot of that is the subconscious. And with talk therapy, with coaching, that's how you create change more on a conscious level. But I believe for things like trauma, emotional trauma, you've got to really get the brain and the body in communication, get that autonomic nervous system balanced so that you can let go. I mean, once you start to let go of the negativity, it just, it's just not that important anymore.
So, Leigh, what's intuition? Is
So,
it
pardon me?
real? What is intuition? Is it
So,
real?
it is to me, it's very real. And it's, in my dissertation, I interviewed several people from the military. The dissertation was on the lived experience of leaders in crisis decision making. And I heard it called the sixth sense. I mean, I heard it called many different things, but intuition is real. And I think it comes from situational awareness. And that's not that fancy. I can remember when I learned how to drive and I would always get lost. And my mom would say, well, were you looking for the landmarks? Was there a 7-Eleven on the corner? And no. And once I started, that's situational awareness. It's walking in, being able to read a room. And part of that has to come from self awareness.
Leigh, my father was born in 1904, so he had me when he was 52. He was very old, and he got his driver's license in the 1920s. I don't know if you know this, but I can't remember when until about 1940. You didn't have to take a test to get a driver's license, so that you just got one. You went down to the courthouse, they gave you one, right? But have you ever stopped and thought about this? And that is, so we had a whole generation of people that learned how to drive on their own, and then their kids grew up, and even if they didn't necessarily see anybody drive, it seemed like they kind of knew how to do it. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And is there anything possible in the genetic transfer of information, or is that just something that's in the air? How the hell does that work?
Well, the way brain processes information makes a difference at, how your visual processing is. And some people are very good, their visual processing, and some aren't. But I do think too, some of it is in the air. When you look at different languages and you look at low content and high content communications, and that real high content, you just got to be able to sniff it out of the air. And the United States is not that good at it.
Yeah. Well, why is that?
Well, I don't know if it's because we're we're a newer community and we tend to be we pride ourselves on productivity and we streamline everything and our level of efficiency. and the key, the key performance indicators that we set for ourselves will tell you very clearly what we expect you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. You're a fascinating woman.
Oh, thank you.
And you also, if you don't mind my saying so, you have great teeth.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so let's leave it with this. So, all right, if I'm addicted to food, what do I do?
Well, it's, addiction is a brain disease, and I don't care if it's food, it's sex, it's drugs, it's alcohol, whatever. Anytime you start doing something and you really like it, that brain starts kicking out dopamine. And dopamine is a really feel good neurotransmitter. And that brain gets confused. It goes from, that's good. I like that. It goes, I like that. I want that. I want more of that. I need that. I need more of that. So, whatever your addiction is, from the very beginning, put some balance in there and put some structure in there. And it's hard because what's when you turn 1 years old, 15 years old, what do? You get cake, you get ice cream. We're conditioned that rewarding our behavior, rewarding ourselves with food is a good thing. And I think that it's a lifestyle choice. I encourage people to really stop and look at their lifestyle choices and what are you eating and how much of it are you eating? And if you can just stop and think about how could I cut back? Because it's self-regulation and we all have to self-regulate.
What?
And there's nothing wrong with getting a little bit of help to help you with that either.
Yeah, and that's what the Brain Performance Center does, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, one more question regarding that addiction thing, the dopamine that you're just talking about. Are young people actually addicted to social media?
Oh, absolutely. When cell phones came out so strong, that was my biggest concern for addiction was the cell phone. And it's been pushed aside by social media.
And is it that people don't take that addiction seriously because it's not like a physical object or a physical consumption?
Well, I don't think that they see the because I've had clients say, "Well, I don't do anything bad. I'm not doing anything bad
Right.
when I'm on social
That's
media."
exactly what I'm talking about. Right. How could it be bad? I'm on my phone. Right.
Until you realize that you can no longer pay attention, that you're not taking care of what you need to be taking care of during the day, you're not taking care of business, you're not talking to your spouse, you're too, and your relationships all of a sudden, they're not going so well. It's that long-term effect that we don't see right away, and we like it, and, "Oh, I like it. I want it. I need it." And so when you feel that way, stop and ask yourself, do you want, do you need your job? Do you need your family?
Leigh, we're going to put a link up on our blog to your book. It's called Turn Your Brain On and Get Your Game On. What's it basically about?
It's basically about just that. The first step of doing business with the Brain Performance Center or Institute is a consultation. And I would be talking with people and I would notice, they'd be looking down. And I would say, I sense some anxiety. Oh, no, no, I'm not. Or I sense some anxiety. I'm not anxious. And I'm like, it's okay to not be okay. And I wrote the book to educate that all of that is what's going on in your brain. And you need to activate that brain. You need to turn your brain on to get your game on.
Are people looking down because they're so used to being on their phones? Is that part of it?
I don't know if because I've been doing this for a long time and they were looking down back then, but
Well,
I
no,
just
you're only 35. How could you be doing that long?
I started when I was 12.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So did I. No, but is that related to it? Are
I
people
think
looking
it
down?
is. I think it is now. And I think that people, because I noticed I just came back from a conference and I noticed how many people were looking down. And I'm not saying that they weren't listening, that they weren't, processing what they were seeing and hearing on an auditory basis.
Yeah.
But I was amazed at how many people were looking down.
Yeah. So am I just, curmudgeonly old bastard that life changes, but sometimes not always for the better. I don't know.
I second that emotion.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. Oh, well. You'll come back, I hope.
I would love to.
That's great. That's terrific. Thanks, Leigh. I really appreciate you joining us today. It's been a
Well,
real
thank
pleasure.
you. And I hope your wife listened to the show.
Yeah, yeah, I do too. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah, you take care. We'll see you.
Bye bye.